Crucify him. Crucify him. Whether it's Passion Sunday or a Good Friday, there is always a reluctance in the voice of the congregation as we read those Gospels together, saying those words, crucify him, crucify him. Some may not say them at all. Let others say it for them. Some avoid this service entirely because they just can't bring themselves to participate in what we say. Others get tears in their eyes as they think about what they are saying and what was done. As they yell aloud, crucify him, crucify him. For a lot of new Christians, and many that I meet with as they prepare for baptism, the question inevitably comes up, why the cross? Such a cruel instrument of death. And let's be clear about the cross. It is a tool of execution, but it's no guillotine, it's no hanging, it's no lethal injection, and it's no electric chair. The cross was meant to make you suffer. You would hang there for hours and maybe even a day while your body broke and shed its blood as you died slowly and painfully. The Roman Empire used this method of execution as a means of control. On their way home from conquering different lands, they would bring citizens of other places with them, so along the roads on their way home, they could crucify them for others to see. It was a method of fear and intimidation, so that others would know who was God. So when I talk about why the cross, with both new, renewed, and tenured Christians, we always have to come to the question, why would God require this? Many of you have heard me telling stories throughout this year about how much I have enjoyed the first 4 months of fatherhood. You've heard me tell stories about reading to my son at bedtime and how much I cherish the life that Heather and I have to take care of. What I haven't shared with many people, and definitely not in this context, is the story of Rory's birth. Mostly because I struggle to talk about it. Some of you will know Rory wasn't due until mid-January, and because of complications, Heather had to be induced 3 weeks early. And for more than 48 hours, she went through a very difficult labor as they tried to bring the induction along. And on early Sunday morning, on the 4th Sunday of Advent, as this congregation was gathering to worship, Heather had to be brought in for an emergency C-section. Those 2 days were 2 of the most difficult days of my life as I tried to be strong for my wife, but inside I was petrified with fear. I remember the midwife told me that once Rory was born, that I could come over to see him at what they called a warming station. And so when the doctor delivered him, and when we heard that first faint cry, I began to get excited. But then there was no noise that followed. I went over to the warming station, and my son was bright blue. He was not moving. He was not breathing. And the nurses and doctors were rubbing him to try and get him to respond. I stood there thinking, maybe this is normal. Maybe this is what always happens. But then one of the doctors pulled out a bag and started to pump air into his lungs. Then another doctor hammered a button that said Code Pink on it. And the NICU started to run in. Rory could be 30 years old one day and getting married. And I will never have that image out of my mind. Because in that moment, as I looked upon my son, in that moment when I thought he might be dead, I began to bargain with God. I said, God, take my life, not his. I know God doesn't work that way. I know that full well, but all I could think to myself was, take me. I had never experienced that before at any point in my life. I had never known what it was like to want to give up my life so that someone else could have theirs. It was the most painful experience I have ever survived. But I have never loved as much as I did in that moment. I had never known what it was to truly self-empty, to love abundantly and full, as I did when I wanted to give up my life for his. When I think about Jesus hanging upon that cross, there's something very different about the way he loved in that moment. Because when I looked upon my son, and when I thought he had a lifeless body, when I thought that he might die, when I thought that he was sick and gone, I was looking at bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. I was looking at someone who I love more than I could have ever imagined. But when Jesus hung on the cross, when he looked out at humanity, when he looked at the one who betrayed him, the one who denied him, those who abandoned him, those who nailed his hands and his feet into rugged wood, he felt the same way. Not their lives, but his. His sacrifice so that they could live. Crucify him, they yelled. Crucify him. And still he offered himself in their place. As they mocked him, as they taunted him, as they begged for his demise. The gospel says that Jesus knew from very early on that the cross was coming. He knew that this was where things were going to go. But I often wonder if he knew the kind of pain that he would experience. Not just the physical pain from the nails in his hands and his feet, the spear in his side, and the crown upon his head. But the pain from having a brother betray him. The pain from having Peter deny him. The pain from so many who would flee. The pain from watching his mother grieve him. from Pilate, wash his hands of him. And from watching so many beat him with glee. God looked upon the world, and he saw that humanity was sick with sin. And so, as he had through every moment in his life, God's Son made a choice. He chose to destroy death that comes from sin. And so as he had from the very moment of the incarnation, as he did again and again through his life, he offered himself as a sacrifice. He offered himself for us and for them. Not through armies or through violence, not through some kind of retribution or revenge, but through a humble and simple act of sacrificial love. And so while they yelled, "Crucify him, crucify him," they hammered nails into God's hands. And so while they yelled, "Crucify him, crucify him," they stabbed the very salvation to which we ascribe. And so when we yell, "Crucify him, crucify him," when all is said and done, left hanging upon that rugged cross is the very fulfillment of God's love.